Hello, students of nonverbal communication. It's your friend Ivy here. I am going to give you a sample individual critique presentation. This is your major assignment. There's the written handout, the typed handout that you're going to use with the class, and there's this 7 to 8 minute presentation where you basically are teaching the class about this piece of research that you have located. Y'all, this is a detailed assignment, and it's your major assignment for the semester. This is the 100-point one. So please reread that assignment in the guidebook, and please use the sample individual critique handout format that is on page 15 and 16. That will give you a roadmap of exactly how to do this handout. Use my headings, structure it exactly that same way, and you'll be good to go. So I'm going to give you a sample presentation based on this article. It's older, it's from 2003, and you just need to find an article from 2000 to the present, published in an academic journal as a study, okay, that uses subjects and all of that. So I'm going to use the one that's in this handout and give you a presentation based on that. Cool? Okay, so here's the sample. Here we go. Imagine I'm just now starting and I'm timing myself, okay? During this time in our country and really around the world, a lot of people are facing job losses. Some people are finding it a very difficult time to own their own business and keep their own businesses open. So it seems like there's a lot of shifting of jobs. There are a lot of folks looking for work, but there's folks who are in their current place of employment, but either people have left or there are changes going on at their workplace. And so people are moving around in their jobs. This article, this study by Michael Kramer, published in 2003 in Communication Monographs, deals with verbal and nonverbal communication that surrounds a job transfer situation. So looking at key terms, the job transfer process, according to Kramer, occurs in 3 different phases within one's employment. So imagine that you were at your job and you got promoted to a supervisory job, or you got shifted to a whole other unit, or you landed some kind of different job. You would go through, Kramer says, 3 phases of employment transfer. Okay, I will let you look at the other key terms. I'm just going to move on to the purpose. This study, Michael Kramer wanted to look at how employees use verbal and nonverbal communication. Of course, we're most interested in the nonverbal. When moving to a new job location within the same organization. There's a term called loosening oneself, which is separating from a current job, and that involves communication. And then you need that communication that starts you in the next job, where you are making new relationships and finding your way. And that's tough for a lot of us. We're leaving a job and maybe leaving some coworkers, maybe even physically changing locations, and we're transitioning into new situations. Of most importance here was the nonverbal communication from coworkers, peers on the same level, and also from people supervisors as a person's leaving a job and transitioning to a new one. In terms of the methods of the study, they used subjects from 2 time periods. There are 2 stages of the Kramer model, the loosening and the transition stages. And there's some detail here about the different organizations they used. Government agencies, private firms, military units. They had 102 subjects total. 89% returned the first questionnaire. There was a follow-up questionnaire, and so then you can read the different demographics of how many were female, how many were male, how many were married, how many had children, and all of that. So these were questionnaires asking all of these different subjects, some of whom were employees, some of whom were coworkers, and some of whom were supervisors. They asked them about verbal and nonverbal communication patterns about people who transferred in their jobs, but again, were in the same organization. They did follow up after that with some phone interviews as well as some face-to-face interviews with different subjects so they could find out more about the loosening process, which again is your departure from a job, and the developing or the transition process, which is making those new relationships and understanding your new job. So in terms of results, the results that they found, they were able to categorize these results into 6 major aspects of communication that is important. So the first one is just talking about changes in your work circumstances. Second one is common conversational topics, the weather, your kids, how's it going? Affective, which is emotional or attitudinal. Don't get affective mixed up with effective. This is affective, which just means your emotions or your attitudes in response to the different conversations you had. Then they had another category about special communication efforts made just before the employee left and transitioned. This might have been comments of tribute, or maybe there was a going away party and people made speeches, or they kind of cheered the person on, gave them good wishes. So also the number 5 are things connected to farewell events, and then the last category Kramer found was general concerns about transfers. This was more in response to some open-ended questions that said just speak about your experience. Okay, so those are the categories. Also, the phone conversations that followed up the written questionnaires found a few other things in terms of just discussions about how transferees met new people. The topic of discussion is we're getting to know new coworkers and new supervisors, the different nonverbal behaviors that emerged. And so that is at the top of the handout, the second page of your handout. One of the interesting findings says that transferees with informational relationships with their supervisors had less positive adjustment. If you have an informational relationship with a supervisor, that's just very work-related. That's, where do I park? Is there a workroom? Where's my workstation? What's going on with my computer? Very informational based and not very personal. And so those folks found that the less personal relationships communicated through nonverbal and verbal communication, those created a less positive adjustment. There was an expected element of a more personal relationship with one's supervisor. Not a super personal relationship where you know all their secrets, but where you know them more as a person than just as someone who can give you information about your job, your employment. Okay, so in the last paragraph of the results section, this is also a study looking at uncertainty reduction theory, meaning that as we have uncertainty, most people communicate verbally and non-verbally to try to reduce that uncertainty. And that is a prime motivator for using communication is we don't like being uncertain. We like being sure of ourselves and our surroundings, and we like looking knowledgeable and looking comfortable. And so we don't like relationship uncertainty. We don't like informational uncertainty. We prefer certainty over uncertainty. And so the relationship with the coworkers and the supervisors, the verbal and nonverbal cues in those relationships go a long way to reduce uncertainty of a job transfer. It's uncomfortable. We don't know what to expect, particularly if you've been in that other job, your former job, a very long time. And now you're transitioning, and a lot is on the line. The verbal and the nonverbal communication that occurs in that workplace transition is really, really critical to how well the person's going to do, how comfortable they feel. So in terms of my critique, I think the methods of the study were sufficient, meaning that what the researcher was trying to find, he ended up creating good methods to be able to find it. Demographic information, I wish we could have known a little bit more about the different organizations, because a private firm is quite different than a military group. And so, I would have liked to have known that. For example, did the people who were in a certain kind of organization respond differently to the questionnaire? Meaning, is job transference and the verbal and nonverbal communication in a successful job transference process, is that the same in a private firm? Let's say it's a private company and it's like a mom and pop restaurant and there's 30 employees. Then you go to a military organization where there may be 30,000 employees. So were these things similar across the different organizations? So I think if organizational profile had been taken into account, that would have been helpful. This study is a little bit general about nonverbal communication. I couldn't tell you specifically from reading this study if eye contact was the key nonverbal that helped make these new relationships in the workplace, or if it was something else, gestures, smiling, facial expressions. And so a little bit more detail on which specific nonverbal cues help a person successfully transition into a job would be important. This study has real life implications for us because I think a lot of people are going to be on the move with jobs. And so this does tell us the communication as we're transferring jobs is quite important. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions. So there you go, y'all. That's it. It went about 8 minutes and 30 seconds. So I didn't stay completely in that 7 to 8 minute range, but that's okay. Give or take a little 30 seconds here and there. It's not a big deal. Y'all, what you don't want to do is go way under time. I usually don't have that happen. You don't want to go way over time, and I frequently have to remind somebody in class, hey, you're at 9 minutes. We need to wrap up. We got to move. And you don't want to be surprised by that. As I've said, it's a very maturing thing to figure out how much information can I get across in 7 to 8 minutes with my style? And what changes do I need to make? It's very maturing. If somebody gives you 5 minutes to speak at a meeting, don't underuse it and go 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes. That'll make you look bad. Don't go overtime. People hate that, and people get really uncomfortable, and people sitting around are like, isn't anybody going to stop this thing? So going overtime, particularly in our culture with a monochronic view of time, don't go overtime. When you are given a certain time frame, you have to respect it, and you have to figure out how you can get in and out of that time frame and say what you need to say, and it's really important. Okay, so the other mistake that people make, other than timing on this thing, is they forget that their main job is to teach the class this study, assuming nobody has read it, even me. Okay, you've got to translate this thing. In essence, you've got to dumb it down, because people haven't read it. So if you get too tied to the page, or you get tied up in a lot of technical language, that is not going to work. And you will hear me interrupt you during your presentation and say, what does that mean? Can you explain that in a simpler way? So you have to understand this study backwards and forwards and be able to ask questions. You're going to get questions from your classmates, respectfully. You're going to get a question or two from me. So you're the expert on this article. You've got to be able to explain it. If you don't understand it and you still try to explain it, we won't understand it, and we'll know. And that'll make you really nervous. So be sure you read the article a whole bunch of times. Take time to ask me questions ahead of the presentation, not the same night or day of the presentation. And let me know how I can help you. Okay? All right. Signing off. I hope this helps you prepare for the individual critique presentation in my nonverbal classes. See you, Islanders. Thank you.